Good day, Commander, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we are going to be taking a look at the... excuse me. Excuse me. Wow, what was that? Today, we're going to be taking a look at the premium British Tier 6 cruiser, the Bortas. Easily one of the better premium ships to come out in, I think, quite a long time, especially for Tier 6. I think the only thing that kind of compares to it as far as meta is concerned is probably the Maya. But I just want to be clear that the Bortas is good for a completely different reason than the Maya, for example. The reason why the Bortas is just so good is because of its armor at the tier that it's at. This is probably the thickest armor for a Tier 6 cruiser that you are going to find. 30mm all around. Pretty nasty considering that at Tier 6, most battleships at this tier don't have anything above the 380 caliber. That is the norm. There's a couple ships here and there that do have the 406 needed to penetrate, but when it comes to accuracy of hitting the target from long range, it's just not going to be there like you would see at Tier 7 and 8. The guns on this ship are also very, very good considering it is Tier 6 and they are 152s, but it is British AP, and with that it has a British AP penetration. So it's not really going to have a lot of trouble penetrating enemy ships, especially if you're facing enemy cruisers. Cruisers are going to have a hard time showing any kind of broadside to you, and because of that, this ship kind of shines when it comes to dealing with enemy cruisers or destroyers on a one-on-one basis. With the positives also come negatives, and that's with any ship. You're gonna find that with just about any ship in World of Warships, but with the Bortas, I feel like it's a little more glaring. And one of the complaints I had with this ship when I originally saw it was announced and being released is there's no smokescreen, and this is supposed to be based off of a Klingon bird of prey, which kind of doesn't make sense because, well, sorry to show all my nerd, but Klingon ships are supposed to be able to cloak. Now, the devs had said something about the ship is already too strong, so if it had a cloaking device, it would be essentially just super broken. I don't tend to agree. I think they could have gone for a 27mm plate all around and then given it a smokescreen, but you know, that's just me. That's just my nerd complaint. Aside from that, the torpedoes, you don't have many of them. You have 3x3, so 3 on each side. They do have a decent amount of damage that they deal when they do touch an enemy, but I don't think there's something to be relied on to get you out of a tight spot against multiple enemies. It's not enough firepower to get rid of, let's say, 2 battleships that surround you if you happen to come around an island. They can be helpful if you're dealing with enemies that are low on health, but it's not enough for any kind of devastating strike on a full health target. Also, the turrets are fine when it comes to the shell penetration, but the rotation of the turrets is pretty awful. It's not really good at all. But this is where match experience and time played against enemy players is going to benefit you with a ship like this. And of course it's going to benefit you with any ship. However, with the Bortas, a cruiser that was essentially designed to push the enemy out of positions, this ship is going to benefit from you keeping your eye on the map, understanding where the enemy is at, what they're doing, and keeping a proper angle against their guns. This ship has excellent armor, but given that if a battleship catches you showing full broadside, keep in mind that excellent armor is going to allow their shells to arm when they penetrate your hull. Therefore, there's kind of a hit and miss with the armor. Where a normal light cruiser would be able to show full broadside and potentially just have overpens and survive the mistake, this ship is a lot less forgiving, especially when turning out and away. With that fact stated, however, this ship has the ability and the tendency to push battleships around the map, which I would say for most cruisers in the game isn't even a possibility unless you're carrying a bunch of torpedoes like the mains, or let's say one of the Japanese cruisers like the Ibuki. But whereas those ships have the ability to push enemy battleships around the map because of the fear of torpedoes, this ship pushes them around because they cannot penetrate your hull unless they're aiming at your superstructure. Now, they can hit you for a decent amount of damage. That's a given. That's a given with just about any ship in the game, even battleships. But that's why I built this ship with a quick rudder shift time, allowing yourself to be maneuverable and juke enemy players into believing you're making one move when you're actually going to turn once they fire their guns is going to save you a lot of health pool. This isn't going to save you in every situation. Obviously, you're probably going to run into enemies that have a bunch of experience and are used to actions like this. However, that is not the main pool of players, and chances are these tactics are still going to work for you as well. All of this being said, I do enjoy this ship personally. I'm glad that I got it for free, and that's kind of the caveat. That's the catch with this video. I got this ship for free, and I did not get this ship for free from Wargaming. I got it for free from the one crate that you get from the event, just by luck. So, whereas I would say to you, the viewer, yes, I do recommend getting this ship. However, the price of the ship, I will leave to you to decide whether it's worth it for you to pay the price of that many doubloons for a ship like this. I think she's worth it. However, I got the ship for free, so maybe perhaps that came into account as I'm making this video, and that's why I feel like the ship was worth it, because I didn't spend 15,000 doubloons on it. However, all of the games that I have played in it, I have enjoyed, and I feel like the ship is extremely strong in many different aspects, especially given the ship is at tier 6. Having this much armor, this much gun penetration, and even having torpedoes on a tier 6 ship like this, I believe makes it worth it. Just as an addition though, I do play cruisers on a regular basis. It's something that I greatly enjoy playing in World of Warships. It's the class that I enjoy playing the most. When it comes to all of the classes, I would have to say on a game-to-game basis, cruisers are something I have the most fun in and I make the most impact in when it comes to benefiting my team. That being said, I can't make the decision for you, but that's why I'm making this video. I'd like to give you, the viewer, some sense of information and gameplay and understanding my frame of mind when I say to you, this is probably easily the strongest tier 6 cruiser in the game now. Out of the several games that I have played so far, I would have to say more often than not, just about any ship that I face, whether that be destroyer, cruiser, or battleship, their shells bounce if I am properly angled. A moment ago, you saw that I took a shell and it did penetrate and dealt a bunch of damage. But again, If this ship isn't nose on or showing the tail, then chances are the enemy is going to penetrate your deck and deal extensive damage. That's just how it is when you have a ship with thick armor. It just gives the enemy a better chance to deal citadel damage when they do penetrate the deck. Now, with all these things said, and you have a better understanding of my frame of mind, let's you and I sit, have a cup of blood wine, have a little bit of gach, and talk about the commander that I use for this ship. And no, it is not the commander that comes with the event, Galron. I've seen videos of Galron being used, and I'm sure he's fine, but truthfully, I think the best commander that goes with this ship is actually an Azura Lane commander, and let me show you why. Azura Lane Cheshire. Now, all of these skills together make for a great set for this ship. Grin and Fire, cruiser main battery load time, negative 2.7%, and incoming damage to your citadel, negative 6.3%. Both add to this ship's strengths, whereas the second ability, Beyond Range, cruiser main battery range, plus 10%. This is kind of a must with this ship, given that this ship has an extremely short range for its main battery guns. I think it's around 12 to start with. Anything that can help is a plus. Anything in this line, though, anything else, I probably wouldn't take, as far as no fly zone or piercer. Definitely not no fly zone, and piercer maybe, but getting too close to the enemy, it's not something that I would recommend for this ship, and not how I play the ship. Now, the thing that makes this commander super special for this particular ship, the Bortas, is this skill, Bounce Right Back. Minimum ricochet angle for shells that hit your cruiser, negative 7 degrees, and guaranteed ricochet angle for shells that hit your cruiser, negative 7 degrees. This makes it very difficult for the enemy to punch through your armor when you are angled properly. And I'll say that again, when you are angled properly. If you're showing full broadside, you are definitely going to get dev struck still, but with that skill, it's going to be hard when you're nose or tail on. As far as the other skill, it would be a waste if you're not using Bounce Right Back. For the third skill, Punch Through, cruiser main gun AP shell damage, plus 8%, cruiser AP shell penetration multiplier, plus 5%, The main guns, are the main source of damage for this ship, so I would recommend going with Punch Through. It will make you more viable in combat. You could go with the survivability route and go with the other ability, Fortified, in order to make your ship last longer. However, your ability to dish out damage throughout the match is going to be hurt. So, in my humble opinion, I believe you should go for anything that helps your AP shells do more damage and punch through enemy armor. As far as the fourth ability, Steer Clear, rudder shift time, negative 5%, steering gear repair time, negative 5%. This is probably something that you could easily go for the other skill, but with the inspirations that I have, I want to be able to stack on more rudder shift time in order to get my armor angled when I am in trouble. As far as Fixated is concerned, you definitely could go with this. Your shells would probably land a lot more and a lot more accurately, but for me, I need that rudder shift time. I don't know what to say. I need it. As far as the legendary skill is concerned, Refill Station, cruiser main battery reload time, negative 5%, and cruiser main battery range, negative 10%. Main battery range and main battery reload time are super important, given that your guns are the main source of damage for your ship and your damage output. I wouldn't recommend relying on your torpedoes for this, so your main guns is where it's at. As far as the other ability in this tree, Fully Packed, you definitely could. You could get an extra heal and an extra sonar, but as far as I'm concerned, it's not really worth it when you're taking away from your source, your main source of damage. For that reason, I would stick with Refill Station. It gives you much more range to deal with enemies when your friends are around. As far as the inspirations are concerned, it is an agile build, so Azora Lane Baltimore, rudder shift time, negative 4.8%, and Azora Lane Rune. Again, it's that typical ultra agile build. Azora Lane Rune, Fate Simulation, cruiser gun traverse speed, plus 0.6 seconds, and rudder shift time, negative 2.4%. The reason why Rune's important here is these guns are terrible when it comes to the turn time, so she helps keep it at least somewhat viable and playable. As far as the upgrades are concerned, main battery mod 2, getting that traverse speed down a little bit more by 20%. This is also super important for the viability of this ship in combat. I do not recommend trying to build a secondary build with this ship unless you have Galron. Steering gears mod 2, rudder shift time, negative 20%. And as for the third, steering gears mod 3, rudder shift time, negative 40%, and steering gear repair time, negative 80%. And that kind of stacks on with one of the other abilities that is in the regular skill tree of the commander. When your repair is on cooldown, you're able to keep your rudder in action without actually burning your repair. As far as its consumables, repair party, 627 HP per second, 20-second consumable time, and a reload time of 76 seconds. As far as the second consumable, sonar, torpedo detectability, 3 kilometers, detection of ships for 0.2 kilometers, consumable duration 94 seconds, reload time of 171, and again you get 2 of them, so not too many, but enough to push a couple of destroyers out of their smoke when need be. I wouldn't go for the defensive AA fire, given that the AA stat on this ship is pretty awful, so that's not going to make a huge difference. I feel like sonar is going to make the bigger difference when it comes to contributing during the match. Now that that's all out of the way, let's talk about stats. She has a survivability of 41 with hit points of 31,400, artillery, 4 times 3 152mm guns, with a firing range with this build of 13.9, so even though I've built into range, it still only shoots 14 kilometers roughly. A reload time of 7.4 seconds, 180 turn time of 20 seconds, and look at those AP shells, 3,348 damage per shell. As far as the torpedoes are concerned, these are kind of just an afterthought, so don't rely on them. 2 times 3, that means 3 per side. They reload every 72 seconds, they turn every 7.2 seconds, and they do 17,100 damage. 8 kilometer range, 61 knot speed, and they do get spotted at 1.3 kilometers, so they are decent, but you don't have many of them. As far as the AA is concerned, this can take some aircraft out of the air, but given that you will be going against tier 7 aircraft carriers, I wouldn't bet on it. Maneuverability, 33.5 knots, so she is incredibly slow, but she has thick armor, so no surprise there. Turning circle of 590 meters, which I think is probably the smallest turning circle out of any cruiser in the game, and a rudder shift time of 3.1 seconds. Pretty good. Concealment, 11 kilometers, regular by sea, and after you fire your guns, 13.9, so roughly the range of your guns, you're going to be spotted. As far as all the other stats are concerned, it's roughly what you would get with just about any cruiser, and when firing in smoke, it's about 5.4, so something to consider. Your sonar is not going to spot something that's close to you that is able to detect you firing in smoke, so something to think about. As far as the armor is concerned, as you can see, it is incredible, especially for a cruiser at tier 6. It is quite literally the best armor out of any tier 6 cruiser in the game. This 30mm plate can easily bounce 380mm, and sometimes I've even bounced 406mm shells off of this hull. That doesn't mean they're always going to bounce. Sometimes I'll lose guns. Sometimes they'll hit the superstructure and go into the deck, doing major damage, but that's usually at range. As you could see from the front, if you do catch a shell and it penetrates, there's not a lot of armor topside that is going to stop that shell from going into your citadel. However, if you keep a decent angle against your enemy, especially enemy cruisers or destroyers, there's really not much they're going to be able to do to stop you, aside from attacking your superstructure. But as I've said many times before, that goes with any ship in World of Warships. Those shells probably won't bounce, but they're not doing major damage either. As far as the guns are concerned, I do recommend keeping your guns turned and angled when you're not firing them. It is a little harder to do since these guns do a 180 every 20 seconds, but if you are savvy enough, you can practice at this and get good at it. As far as I've seen out of, I think, close to 20 games in this ship, these guns do get knocked out fairly easily if they get hit on the side, but that front plate is extremely thick and can take quite a bit of damage. Don't rely on that fact to save your guns in a fight against a battleship, though. If a battleship with 406mm guns wants to take out your guns, even that front plate probably isn't going to stop them. You should always have a plan B up your sleeve, as it were, when you're dealing with enemy battleships. But I think that's what those torpedoes are for. All in all, this is probably one of the best premium cruisers to come out in years, and I do not say that lightly. I'm a cruiser player. I love using light cruisers, and I have been impressed with just about every single match that I've played. It continues to surprise me, and as far as I've seen, it continues to surprise the enemy. Now, you as the viewer, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I will say as long as this ship is available, I would consider buying it if you enjoy playing cruisers. If cruisers isn't your style, then you probably won't like this. And if you like a cruiser with a bunch of torpedoes, again, you're probably not going to like this. Now, these torpedoes are not numerous, but they do hit pretty hard. So having them in your back pocket is definitely a plus. As a final thought, here's a couple final thoughts for you. I've said this before and I'll say it again. If you don't have all your bills paid, if you have rent due, don't buy this ship. And one of the reasons why I say that is because this ship will probably be back once it's gone. Normally, things like Azure Lane, Transformers, all those kind of special event ships, they usually come back after a short time. Sometimes it's a year, sometimes it's several months, but they do eventually come back. So I imagine the Bortas will also be back. So if you don't have the money for it right now, you have other things going on, don't worry about it. This ship more than likely will come back into the store at some point and give you the opportunity to buy it. And just as a final nerd complaint, they named this ship the Bortas, right? The Bortas was a Vorcha class cruiser, okay? This is based off of a bird of prey that is literally two different classes of ships. So, yeah, take with that what you will, but a little bit of disappointment there. I I don't know what Wargaming was thinking, but maybe they're not Trekkies. Maybe they don't watch the show, actually, and I don't know. A little bit of disappointment there. It would have been nice to have a Vorcha class cruiser skin, but the Bird of Prey skin looks a-okay. And with that, I do appreciate you joining me once again on one of my videos. I do plan on making some more content regarding the Star Trek special event ships and commanders and what they entail. So stay tuned for that. If you enjoyed this content, consider subscribing. Leave a like, hit the notification bell for future content like this, and even comment down below letting me know any ships that you're interested in seeing a closer look at, any ships you're interested in seeing gameplay of, or even other games you might be interested in seeing. I'm Buckshot Bucky. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see